Okay, I want you to picture the start of a road trip. Or, even just your morning commute.
Yeah.
In your head, what's that specific moment the drive actually begins?
Well, I'd say 99% of people, it's the ignition. You sit down, turn the key, or you hit the button, the engine roars to life, and boom, you're driving.
Right, that's the action moment. But we have a stack of research here, and it's all centered around this one guide. Essential pre-start vehicle safety tips for every driver. And it seems to argue that we're looking at this all wrong.
Completely wrong.
If I'm reading this right, it's saying that if you wait for the engine to be on to start driving, you're already behind.
You're already reacting instead of controlling. And that's really the philosophy here. I know it's called safety tips, which sounds like, something you'd see at the DMV and just ignore.
Totally.
But it's really more of a manifesto on cockpit management.
Cockpit management. Now, see, that sounds way cooler than check your mirrors.
It is, though. The source makes this really compelling case that the pre-start isn't some chore list. It's a ritual. It's about switching your brain and your car from a passive state, just a parked car, to an active, high-velocity machine.
So our mission for this deep dive is to break down that ritual. We're not just going to list the steps because, anyone can read a list. We want to get into the why, the physics, the psychology, and honestly, some engineering stuff I didn't even know was a thing until I read this.
And we should probably warn you up front. There is a section in here about children that is, well, it's intense. The author basically grabs you by the collar.
Yeah, we will definitely get to the red alert section. But let's start with the first thing it mentions, securing the environment. And it goes straight for the dashboard. Now, be honest, my dashboard is basically a coffee table. Sunglasses, mail, maybe a hat.
And the source hates that. It absolutely hates it. It flags the dashboard as a critical clear zone.
Is that just about being tidy? Or is there a real danger?
Oh, there's a real danger. Two specific threats, actually, and they're about physics and biology. The first one is kinetic energy. An object on your dash is just sitting there. When you take a sharp turn, the car moves, but that object wants to stay put.
Until it slides all the way across the dash.
Right, and that's where the biology comes in. The source calls it a distraction reflex. It says you might lose control if you try and catch it. And it's hardwired. You see movement in your peripheral vision and your brain just screams, "Catch the falling thing!"
Oh, I've done that 100%. You don't even think about it. Your hand just goes.
Exactly. And suddenly you're prioritizing a $10 pair of sunglasses over piloting a 2-ton machine. But the second risk is actually, I think, more subtle and more dangerous. The source calls it the reflection risk.
Okay, so this is about glare.
It is, but let's get a little technical. In optics, it's called veiling glare. If you put a white piece of paper or like a glossy menu on the dash, it reflects onto the inside of the windshield.
And you get that little ghost image floating in your vision.
Right. But here's the problem. Your eyes can't focus on the reflection and the road at the same time. The reflection creates a second focal plane, and your eye muscles are literally fighting over what to look at.
So it's slowing down your reaction time.
By milliseconds that count. The source is adamant. Items on the dash cam obscure your visibility. It's creating visual noise.
Okay, rule 1. The dash is not a shelf. Got it. Now let's move down to the floor, specifically the driver's footwell.
This is one of those things people never think to check. You just get in, toss your bag on the passenger seat, and go. But the source has this very specific horror story. It calls it the soda can scenario.
Okay, I have to ask, is that real? It feels like an urban legend. A can rolling under the brake pedal.
It sounds like it's from a movie, but it is a mechanical reality. A brake pedal is a lever, right? It needs a full range of motion. If you wedge something hard, like a full can of soda or a water bottle under it,
The lever stops.
it stops. And you can't just push through it, not in that split second you need a brake. The source is explicit. Make sure there is nothing obstructing any of the vehicle controls. So that trash in the back could literally become a projectile in a hard stop.
So part of the ritual is a quick scan of the floor.
It implies you need to be a minimalist in the cockpit. If it's loose, it's a liability.
Okay, what about the gear check? It says, ensure the gear is in neutral or park. This feels a little basic. Don't most modern cars prevent you from starting in gear anyway?
Most do, yeah. But we're building a fail-safe habit because mechanical things can fail. There's a thing called false park where the little pin that locks the transmission doesn't fully engage. So the lever says park, but the car isn't really locked.
And if you start the engine like that?
The vibration could be enough to knock it out of that false position. And if you haven't checked, or if it's a manual and you haven't pressed the clutch, which the source also mandates, the car lurches.
Ah, yeah, it does mention that. If a stick shift, press in the clutch.
Which physically disconnects the engine from the wheels. It's the ultimate failsafe. Even if you left it in first gear, clutch in, you're not going anywhere.
All right, let's talk structure. Doors. The source just says close and lock. Now, I've always thought locking doors was about security, keeping people out.
That's the common wisdom. I'm in the city, lock the doors. But the source frames this as a safety issue. It says, locked doors are less likely to open in a crash.
Wait, walk me through that. I thought the latch did all the work. How does the lock button help in a crash?
This is where the engineering is fascinating. In a serious collision, especially a side impact or a rollover, the car's frame flexes. It twists. The door isn't just an opening, it's a structural part of the car's safety cage.
So it's like a reinforcing bar.
Exactly. But if the forces are strong enough, they can pull on the latch mechanism. When you engage the lock, you're adding a secondary reinforcement. You're making sure that door stays put and does its job, which is to keep the cabin from collapsing.
So if the door pops open,
The whole structure gets weaker. The roof is more likely to crush. And of course, the occupant can be thrown from the vehicle. The close and lock rule is about keeping that survival cell intact.
that completely changes how I think about that little click. It's not just about security. It's about structural integrity.
It's structural reinforcement with the push of a button.
Okay, let's get into the cockpit setup. Positioning. The source starts with the seat angle, saying whatever is most comfortable for you.
Which is good advice. Comfort reduces fatigue. But the critical part is the distance. It says not too far so that your limbs have limited movement.
Right. I see people driving who are basically lying down with their arms fully stretched out to the wheel.
And that's a huge problem because in an emergency, steering requires quick, forceful movements. If your arms are straight, you have zero leverage. You can't pull the wheel down hard to avoid something. You need that bend in your elbow to generate force.
But the source also warns about being too close. And it's because of the airbag.
The further the better is the direct quote.
Why? I thought an airbag was supposed to be a soft pillow. Don't you want to be close to it?
That is probably the most dangerous myth in car safety. An airbag is not a pillow. It is a controlled explosion. It deploys at nearly 200 miles per hour.
200.
Yes. It has to inflate in milliseconds to catch you. If you're sitting too close, your chest right up against the wheel, the airbag is still exploding outward when it makes contact. It's like standing in front of a cannon.
So you need to be far enough back that the bag is already full and starting to deflate by the time your body hits it.
Exactly. You want to hit a decelerating bag, not an accelerating explosion. Find that sweet spot. Close enough for leverage, far enough to survive your safety device.
And what about mirrors? The source just says a quick glance.
This goes back to that pilot mindset. It's your situational awareness check. You can't make good decisions if you can't observe your surroundings.
And mirrors get bumped all the time. Parking lots, car washes.
Or if you share the car with someone, if you start driving and then realize your side mirror is pointing at the ground, you have to fix it while you're moving.
Yo.
That's a distraction. Do it before you go.
Okay, we've arrived at the part about passengers. And this is where the tone of the whole document it shifts. I called it the red alert section.
It really does. The
Yeah.
formatting, the punctuation, the author starts yelling at you.
Before the yelling, there's a simple rule. No children under age 12 or smaller in stature in the passenger seat.
And this goes back to the airbag and the seatbelt. A car is designed for an average-sized adult. If a kid is in the front, the seatbelt hits their neck, not their shoulder. And that 200-mile-an-hour explosion we talked about, it hits them in the head. It can be instantly fatal.
But then
Yeah.
it gets to the part about toddlers. And I'm going to read this exactly as it's written. Parents, do not let your toddlers or young children stand on the passenger seat.
Yeah.
And then in all caps. People, please do not do this. Be aware of just how dangerous this is, with all the exclamation points.
You can just feel the desperation in the writing.
Why this specific warning? I mean, do people actually do this?
I think we've all seen it. You're in a parking lot or you're just moving the car in the driveway. The kid wants to see out the front, so they stand up. And the parent thinks, it's fine, we're going 2 miles an hour.
But the source is saying it's never fine.
Think about the physics. A standing child has zero connection to the car. They're just an object on a moving platform. If you just tap the brakes, even at 5 miles an hour, the car stops, but the child keeps moving forward at 5 miles an hour until they hit the dashboard or the windshield.
And if the airbag deploys in that situation,
It's catastrophic. We're talking severe trauma. It's a horrific thing to imagine, but that's why the author is using all caps. They are trying to shatter that complacency.
it's a very harsh reality check. The solution is blunt. Always use a safety seat.
No exceptions. The laws of physics don't care if you're just going to the end of the driveway.
And that brings us to the primary lifeline, seatbelts. The source calls this the very first thing to do, even though it's listed later. It seems like this is the one you absolutely cannot skip.
It is. And it breaks down the why in a really helpful way. It talks about frontal collision and side collision.
For the frontal one, it says the belt prevents you from impacting the dashboard or windshield. That's the second collision idea, right?
Exactly. The first collision is the car hitting the tree. The second is you hitting the inside of the car. The seatbelt makes you part of the car's deceleration system, the crumple zones.
And for a side collision, it says it prevents being flung from the vehicle.
Flung. Such a visceral word. Ejection is the absolute worst-case scenario in a crash. Modern cars are survival capsules, but the airbags, the safety cage, they all only work if you are inside them.
The seatbelt is what keeps you inside the capsule.
Precisely. And the source stresses this is for everyone. Check that all other occupants are buckled. You're the pilot. The plane doesn't take off until everyone's secure.
And it brings up short trips again. Must be worn even for short trips.
Because most accidents happen close to home. That's where your guard is down. You think you know the roads, you think you know the risks, but you don't control the other guy.
There's one final thing it touches on, almost like a side note, but I think it's so important. The unfamiliar vehicle.
Yeah. If the vehicle is new to the driver, consult specific tips.
This is for rental cars or borrowing a friend's truck. You hop in, adjust the seat, and you just go. But you have no idea where anything is.
And that creates a massive cognitive load. Imagine it starts to rain hard, the windshield fogs up. Do you know where the defroster button is? Or are you going to be fumbling with the controls, taking your eyes off the road while you're going 60?
That's a disaster waiting to happen. You're hunting for a switch instead of driving.
Exactly. The pre-start ritual for a new car needs to be 5 times longer. Touch every button. Turn on the wipers. Flash the high beams. Build a tiny bit of muscle memory before you add the stress of traffic.
So we've gone through the dashboard, the floor, doors, seat, mirrors, passengers, and belts. It sounds like a lot when we talk about it for this long.
But in reality, it's 30 seconds, maybe less.
It's a flow. Scan, check, lock, adjust, click.
And that flow actually primes your brain. It tells you, okay, I am now driving.
That's the biggest takeaway from me. We started by saying most people think the drive begins when the engine turns on. But this source proves that if you wait till then, you've missed the whole point.
The pre-start is where you win or lose. By the time you turn that key, all the variables, the mechanical risks, the distractions, the structural issues, they should already be taken care of.
So it's about not being a passenger in the driver's seat.
I love that. A passenger just sits down and hopes for the best. A pilot runs a checklist and ensures the outcome.
So here's a final thought for you. The next time you get in your car, maybe later today, just pay attention to what you do first. Do you just turn the key?
Or do you earn the key turn?
I like that. Viewing the turn of the key, not as the beginning, but as the reward. It's the final step. If the engine is on, it means you're already prepared.
And that's a mindset that really can save lives.
Check your floor maps, lock your doors, and please, for the love of all that is holy, keep the kids seated. Thanks for listening to this deep dive. Drive safe.
Please like, subscribe, and get notified.